Alexandra, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. You all right?
Yeah, really good, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My initial reaction was quite rare, actually. That I read it and I could see Abby, who she was if I played her, and um, I could just see her in like full formation. Like sometimes characters take loads of work and research and everything, but even though this was a world that I know nothing about, like the cyber tech world, I just knew who she was, and I really felt like I had to be the voice of this character, and I would do anything to play her. So when I actually got the part and to get up to Glasgow, it was just like so exciting. Um, but what was the other part of the question?
It was just
Sorry.
about kind of the kind of twists and turns of it, and if you kind
Yeah,
of had that say, because I guess we all have that experience over the course of kind of six episodes. So
yeah.
I'm wondering if that's kind of replicated in the course of reading each script as you go.
Yeah, and what I loved about it is that you find out more about her and everyone really, but my focus is her. As the episodes go on, you kind of really understand where she's come from and the world that she lives. She's just so comfortable in this world, and this is her life. She doesn't really have a life outside of this cyber world. Um, and I really liked that in episode one, you kind of seeing her for the first time. She's always in that office. You're seeing her like go on a holiday with her childhood friend, and she's gonna unplug and she's gonna have a nice time. And then the phone call comes in, and it's her in real time trying to be almost like one step ahead of this driver. And I think she sees it as a real battle between just her and the driver, and one of them's going to win and one of them's going to lose. And that's really ramped up throughout the whole episodes, and in her head it's just between her and the driver, and she needs to save the people on the train before something awful happens.
I'm interested in knowing what it's like shooting a real time kind of production and what sort of unique challenges that pose. Is it easier or harder to remain in that kind of same headspace across the course of a lot of obviously weeks or months kind of shooting something? Because you're same costume, generally the kind of same sets and same people. What's it like to make a show like that?
Yeah, it's really different to any other series that I've done in that sense. Yeah, there's one costume throughout the whole thing, which had its own sort of relationship with, because if you wear something for that long, on the end, on the end day of shooting, I remember like taking it off that jacket and being like, who am I now that that jacket's not on me? But yeah, the real time aspect, it it was odd because we were never in the same place as the guys on the train. They were in a warehouse over in that side of Glasgow, and we were in the east end of Glasgow in a big warehouse in this studio. And because of like the real time, fast paced element of it, we were kind of, and there's a lot of steady cam. I kind of understood very early on that she feels there's nowhere else in the world that she feels more comfortable than in that office, and in that whole office. And it was massive, so we got to like walk around and really stride, and whereas the guys on the train were like really close together. But that kind of gave us room and like gave us a dynamic as a group to kind of solve this. But we were always on the front foot. There's never any time to like relax. You never really see them like go out to the shop or eat or anything. It's like this is number one. And you see them make mistakes as well, which I found a real human aspect of it. And I found that when I was reading it, was that as problems are coming up and problems arise and they're understanding more about this situation, they're still human and they still mess up. And there's the relationships you finding out more about the relationships with the other people in their office. So there's lots of layers to it, but like the real time aspect, um sometimes felt quite claustrophobic because it's really high stakes, and it's, you know, you're all in the same costume, and it's like, how many days have we been here trying to solve this, and with the big screens and everything. So it was important that like we took time out and would go and just like have some fresh air in between like the big high stakes scenes where the camera was like going round and it felt like almost like the walls were closing in. But it's like, in a way, that was super helpful as well, because Abby's so she's just so desperate to solve this, but the pressure on her shoulder is on her shoulders are massive, and she just wants to save the people. But having that element of us all being in the same costume day on and day after day really felt like important to make that sort of like pressure on her. So yeah, I think it worked. Sorry, rambling.
No, but this is going to sound like a really stupid question, but like a lot of your scenes, and big, impactful, emotional scenes, are done over the phone.
Mm.
Is it just a dead line, or someone feeding lines to you, or have they got a recording of Joe's voice? What do you work with in that kind of situation? I mean, you're very experienced, and you often have to suspend disbelief as an actor, you know, acting opposite, you know, kind of tennis balls on sticks. But when you're doing those really big scenes on a phone, do they give you anything to help kind of support your acting in that moment?
Yeah, I think it was down to me and for me to call it and what I needed. And as much as, you know, I could do it like with a tennis ball on a stick, but I didn't want to. So I wanted to make it as real as possible. And there's some days that I did it with Joe, and I would go on set with him and hide behind camera and like feed him the lines. And then as the show went on, we kind of worked out a system where we would use the phone for real, and I'd have an actor on the phone, a brilliant Scottish actor called John Scoogle would be in the studio somewhere with me or on set, but I could just hear his voice, because there was something really precious about just hearing a voice that makes you kind of zone into it, and it can be quite precious. So I didn't want to lose that by just not having anyone on the other line. I wanted it to the reactions and everything to be as natural and as real as possible.
Yeah. It's nice you got to spend some time with Joe on set. He's a great guy, isn't he? I've got
Yes.
a lot of time for Joe. I've interviewed him a
Yeah.
few across the years, and think we
Oh,
even hung out in Glastonbury at one point. But no,
did you, Lush? You're left out now.
I know. There's, I was quite interested though, because I think I interviewed you years ago for Private Peaceful, I
Oh
think.
my goodness.
So I know, and I was thinking about that. It made me feel like I've been doing this a long time.
Same.
It made me realize that, you know, like not just myself, but like you're quite experienced now. You've been in this kind of game quite a good long while, you know. And I just wondered, talking of kind of experience and looking at your career, there's such a myriad of roles. Everything's very varied. I just wondered if there's still any type of role you're still really desperate to try, or a certain filmmaker or someone you'd love to work with. There's still kind of checkpoints you'd still like to tick off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the minute that goes, then what am I doing in this job? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I feel really lucky to look back at the career that I've had. And I was kind of reminded this week that, you know, I started off acting when I was 11 or 12. So I've been doing this for like over 20 years. But the thing about Abby, I don't know, I very rarely meet characters or play characters like her. And it felt like a real signpost moment in my career so far. And as ever, like, you know, all the actors, I'm at the mercy of, you know, the industry or whatever, but there's stuff still to be done. And I want to produce my own work. I want to direct, and I'm writing at the minute. So I think that's what's next for me, hopefully.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing Lazarus as well. That is really,
Yeah.
really exciting. So I think I've probably only got time for one more question, but I was just interested to know, this is a bit of a silly one, but like I've noticed there's this online kind of culture thing at the moment of people raw dogging flights and long journeys. So they're kind of going on planes, and rather than listening to music, watching films, they just sit there for like 8 hours, whatever it is. And I know this is based on a kind of this, there's a night sleeper train here. I just wondered, what's your process on a long journey? What do you do when you've got a nice long 8 or 9 hour stretch ahead of you? How do you find Zen in those moments?
Yeah, Zen. I don't know. I like to I just listen to loads of podcasts and get comfy. But also, there's like, as a writer, as an actor, there's a real magic, or it's quite useful sometimes to take the headphones out and to just listen to conversations around. I find that is a real good way of finding characters, or like sometimes you get great lines and I can just like write it down and it'll spark something, or maybe not. But then podcasts, music, the usual. I haven't got any amazing tips here.
So but lots of observing then. Do you find yourself as an actor then? Were you always like that before you started acting? Or is it since you started writing even, you found yourself kind of looking around you for kind of inspiration?
Do you know what's weird is that I can, every time like I go to a gig or to watch a DJ or anything, I'm more distracted by like the people around me on the dance floor than I am by like really being in the show. I've always been inspired by humans and people and the way they are, and I'm just like so curious about what their story is and how they got here. And I think I've had that since I was a child. And that's sometimes like the daydreaming element gets me through the day sometimes.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me today, Alex. It's been a real pleasure. And hopefully
nice to see you.
We'll catch up again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey you guys!
Hey, you guys!